Maggie Hulce is Senior Vice President and General Manager at Ed.D, and there she focuses on serving her global customers. Prior to that, Maggie was the Director of Sales at Google. And Maggie, one of the big problems in collaboration is when we set enterprise-wide goals, it can be very difficult for the people on the line who have their performance measured by their local goals. And they don't necessarily get credit for that enterprise-wide goal. So how do you help them focus on both the enterprise-wide goals as well as their local performance goals?
I think when you have enterprise-wide goals, it's just so very important that the teams understand, the broader organization understands, why we're doing the thing. The reason why we believe this particular initiative or this particular goal is a good thing, in our case for job seekers, a good thing for employers, how we believe it will help transform our business, and that context is provided. I think that's foundational to having teams feel a sense of understanding and feel a sense of how they're contributing and why it matters. Certainly, as we've thought about big enterprise goals and how you get teams to work together from across the business, there's also the activation of how do you actually solicit ideas from across the organization, from many, many different functions and from many, many different perspectives. Often you'll have a sense of where you need to go, but there's a lot of pieces of the how that still need to be figured out. And so part of, encouraging collaboration and teams sort of stepping up and feeling ownership is actually creating the environments for people to contribute to the way something will actually play out, and making it very clear that you want the contributions from across the business in shaping the plan and, promoting and working as a leader to break down silos where silos may exist or where there actually may be friction in teams working together to achieve a goal.
So would that look like specific salary bonuses for people who are able to collaborate across the different functions, or perhaps just a performance review mention that you've done this and you get credit for it?
Oh,
what does that?
Yeah. So, I think if you think about specifically how you can encourage teams to share information and to promote work across functions, I think part of it is, again, sort of setting the environment. So how you can make sure there's an expectation that teams who are working together are sharing information with each other. There's transparency, there's sort of ownership and clarity as to how pieces connect and who's working on what bits, and everyone is being really open with everyone else. Sometimes in organizations, you'll have teams talk about, swim lanes. And when you actually want functions to work together, you actually want to be promoting more of an open collaboration or contribution model. I actually just recently listened to a talk from someone from GitLab, and they were 100% remote before COVID. And they were sharing they have this philosophy that all employees should have short toes, which I thought was so great, meaning it shouldn't be possible to step on anyone's toes, because you should have a culture where collaboration is welcomed. And it's just part of the culture, from the smallest of tasks all the way up to contributing to broader sort of C-level work. And it's expected of anybody from, whatever team, whatever title, however long you've been at the company. So what we've generally found is it's first sort of creating the environment where people know your contribution is welcome and expected even, and then making sure you're recognizing and celebrating those contributions. You asked me specifically about bonuses, and we have made sure, for example, in our organization, we have this concept of business impact. And it's part of our sort of calibration for bonuses, for example. And we've made it really clear that collaboration towards helping other teams achieve their goals is part of what counts as impact for the business, making sure that people really don't think or feel that there's an internal conflict between doing what's right for the overall business, helping another team achieve their goals, and doing something that might be more close into their specific team.
That's great. So you not only just give credit and recognition for it, but you also compensate it.
We do. And again, it's part of a broader recognition of not just sort of what is the work that you're doing to contribute to the organization, but how do you work? And individuals who are helping other teams, who are contributing to others' goals, is part of helping the broader organization. And of course, you have to balance, no one has infinite time. So you have to balance, where your teams spend their times and make sure there's conversation about trade-offs. But generally, where it's the right thing to do, managers and the employees know that making a decision that's better for the greater good of the organization will be recognized and will be valued.
That's fantastic. When there are these collaborations happening, are there disagreements of which direction to go? And if so, is there a system or a way in which you approach the disagreements so that every voice is heard?
Yeah, so we have, we do use a number of sort of shared working documents when we're sort of hashing through how might we go about solving a particular problem, or how might teams work together. And I think part of having a collaborative culture is welcoming that there will be disagreement, and sometimes inviting the disagreement. You don't want people to sweep that, under a carpet. You want to encourage speaking up if you disagree. You want to encourage very diverse contribution, and definitely people don't always agree on the best way to go. So we encourage sort of teams to work that through together, to sort of bat around ideas, to talk about the pros and cons of various approaches. And oftentimes, they come to resolution given the time and space to actually have the debate. And I think it's also important to, if teams try something and something goes wrong, to have a culture where it's not about blame, but about saying, okay, what did we learn? What was sort of the root cause of this thing? How are we all collectively learning and getting better together, versus saying, okay, this didn't work, this was wrong, let's go this way. Again, sort of saying, all right, we're trying to solve this problem collectively. There's a range of ideas. We've tried something that didn't work. How do we think about the next thing we'll try? And it's sort of like a growth mindset for the whole organization. But how do you make sure employees take that tack, and not an approach of like, well, we'll try your idea. If it fails, then it's on to my idea, or something like that, right? Versus they're all sort of working together to say, what can we learn from this? And then how do we get better together?
So a real learning culture that reaches out to try and learn different aspects, because you might even take some aspects of the failed attempt.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of tech companies that are running, many A/B tests, many experiments all the time, you have to have sort of the, what have we learned? How do we take it? How do we improve? And you need the organization to be sort of open to other ideas, or willing to share, this is what we tried, this is why it didn't work. We want the rest of the organization to learn from this and maybe help us build upon it. Maybe there's an angle we haven't thought about. And to welcome that input from other teams versus, keeping it at arm's length.
That's a very difficult thing to instill in an organization. There has to be a lot of safety and trust. How do you go about building that kind of trust in the organization?
Again, I think it comes back to what the leader's role model. So, again, when something goes wrong, making sure that it's, not a sort of blame approach, but okay, what have we learned? How are we going to improve? How do we make sure we get better next time? The leaders themselves role modeling how they contribute and, help each other. So, for example, I have the enterprise business. I have a peer who leads our small business pillar. And there are many areas where we collaborate. And we try to make sure that our teams see us doing that, see how we're thinking that through, see how we're trying to think about sort of the broader organization as we work together. And, I think then there's other things like, how do you have teams when they do feel like, wow, I'm not sure that this team has the best intention, going back to your sort of question about how do you build trust, having there be the opportunity to talk things through with teams to really understand where people are coming from. And my goodness, usually in organizations, there are so many problems to solve and so much, great work to be done. So letting people just talk through and trying to have sort of the approach where, you give people the benefit of the doubt and you try to actually understand their perspective before jumping to any conclusions. Again, it's a journey to build trust, but a lot of it starts with just being humans with each other, talking things through, and then trying to find the common ground and sort of building from there.
So just lots of conversations that are very open and honest, it sounds like.
Yeah. And a lot of listening. I heard someone say something great last week. They said, listening should be like an on-off light switch, not a dimmer switch, which I thought was so great. But you should be listening and really trying to understand, or you should be, obviously doing something else, but don't sort of half listen, half give people your attention, be multitasking when you're trying to understand where they're coming from. And that's also about, conveying your respect for what people have to say and what they're bringing to the table.
Was there a time that you worked on a great team that collaborated really well? And what were some of the markers or symbols or signs that this was a great collaboration?
Many times. There have been many great teams. I think, when the team has an environment where they really want and encourage everyone's perspective to be included. I know that sounds so basic, but there are many teams I've been a part of where it was much more of a divide and conquer, and we'll come back together versus let's make sure we actually triangulate together and, hear all the perspectives before we align on the way we want to go forward. And I think, underneath all of that is almost a humility that, you can have a team with lots of different talents, but no one is perfect. No one knows everything. So how do you have a team where the team is trying to triangulate perspectives? They're trying to suss out, people who don't agree or what we might be missing. And then you get this dynamic where, the team really is engaging with each other and trying to help each other. And also, again, not shying away from debate or dissent, but welcoming it in the spirit of trying to get to the best possible outcome.
That's excellent. So issue-based conflict rather than personality-based conflict.
Right. So it's about the idea. It's about what are we working towards? And look, if there's an individual who's behaving in a certain way that is problematic for the team, ideally in a high-performing team, you might say, hey, you are obviously not paying attention. You are multitasking on your phone. And when you do this, when we're working on a team, like everybody feels like you don't care, you're not listening, but there's enough trust with the team where you can actually call people on behaviors that actually might be problematic for the team, but you've worked together so much and you're ultimately all trying to achieve a goal together that, you might drift, someone might drift and be behaving in a way that is creating a bad dynamic for the team in whatever way, but you can actually address it and talk it through, just like you might with any human relationship that you have. And I think in high trust teams, they can have those conversations with each other and, and understand each other better and then figure out the best way to navigate whatever that thing might be. But yes, back to what you said originally, I think ideally highest performing teams, it's focused on what is the goal? What are we trying to achieve? There's buy-in and understanding of the context around that thing. And then the team is trying to, play off each other's strengths and use them all towards figuring out the best way to achieve whatever the goal is.
That's an excellent summary. Thank you. I'm wondering too, at Indeed, you also have a lot of other companies that you're working with and you do surveys to try and find out about those companies. What is your thought about have people improved their collaboration skills by going virtual, or has that made it more challenging?
That's a good question. I think that over the period of COVID and everything that we've been through over the last 2.5 years, organizations have become more human and more empathetic. I think working together where you get windows into people's homes and, you see sometimes their kids are crawling all over them or they've got other things going on. It creates sort of a different tenor of a lot of the meetings and conversations. And I've heard many companies say, we used to start our meetings just sort of like, this is the agenda and we're getting down to business. I've heard similar people say things about boards they were on. And instead, in this period of time, people have been starting and thinking about, how are people actually doing as people, first and foremost, and then sort of getting into the agenda. And I do think foundationally, that is, extraordinarily helpful for great collaboration, because as people start to know each other and trust each other more and are just more open with everything that's going on in their life, they feel less inhibited about just saying, gosh, like this thing, these are my concerns and here's why. And understanding that they're not coming at it for some, egotistical reason. They're coming at it because they're thinking it through and they're trying to make sure as a group, we're making the right choice, we're doing the right thing. So I actually think, in a lot of the various feedback that we've heard about how people are thinking about culture in companies, now that there's so much virtual, empathy in organizations, mental health in organizations, all of that actually does help in getting people to think a little bit differently about collaboration. Now, all of that said, there's definitely still a need for in-person. We just had a bunch of our leaders together just last week, and it was awesome to see our, product and engineering leaders gather together, in a room on a big whiteboard and work things through in a way that they just haven't really been able to do over the last 2.5 years. And the excitement and the energy that comes from problem solving together, it's hard to fully replicate in a virtual environment. But, the willingness to collaborate and to understand where people are coming from, I actually do think this period of time has made us stronger, not weaker in that regard.
Well, that's excellent. I really appreciate all your thoughts on this collaborative energy. I'm wondering if there's anything else that you'd like to add that you think is really important for firms to become stronger in collaboration with one another.
I think maybe in organizations, one thing I would say that has been really helpful for Indeed is having there be some formal mechanisms beyond sort of like what leaders encourage of how people work together to solve, but some more formal ways that you can invite from your broader employee base ideas. So for example, at Indeed, we have an internal incubator, and anyone from the company, again, of any tenure, can pitch an idea for a solution that we should be offering for job seekers or for employers. And it goes through a process kind of like a early stage VC funding process. And, we pick teams to fund, and those individuals get to come out of their job and focus on developing an MVP solution with product, technology, marketing, et cetera, to support them. And it's been an awesome source of innovation ideas. Many great ideas come from sales and CS for new products. People who don't necessarily have technical backgrounds, but are very, very close to our clients and see opportunities. And we've been able to celebrate those teams as, look, this concept of great ideas can come from anywhere in your organization. But how do you make sure those ideas get heard? And how do you create sort of forums for them to rise, especially when they might be people who are in their first 5 years post-college, but have great ideas? So I would just say that's another one to think about. Might not make sense in every organization, but are there ways where someone who's just starting out but has an awesome idea feels like they have a way to get that idea heard and or to propose something that could make the company better, and that the company actually really does want to hear the idea? And just how much empowerment and excitement and a sense of ownership that people get when they feel like I matter and my ideas matter. And, no matter how senior, our leaders want to hear them. So that's been one thing that I think we've taken a lot of really good learnings from.
That's excellent. And do you have such a program at Indeed?
Yeah, so that this is the program we have at Indeed. This incubator is is an Indeed program. And yeah, what I was just mentioning, like many of the ideas that we funded have come from individuals who are sales or client success versus had typical product backgrounds. Again, because they're so close to clients and so close to what our end clients are actually trying to solve for.
That's excellent. Kind of an entrepreneurship feature to that program. That's excellent. Well, thank you, Maggie. I appreciate you sharing your ideas at this conference, and we look forward to learning from you more.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.